Hi everyone. I'm Cindy Acanto. I own Book Club on the Go, which is based in Connecticut, and we're an author and book event service. And I'm joined here tonight with my friend, John Valeri, who was kind enough to set up this amazing evening with my new best friend, Marcia Clark. Marcia, I'm thrilled to host you.
I'm so thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. And thanks for giving us on the East Coast something to look forward to and get like out of my pajamas for at 9 o'clock at night, because that hasn't happened in months. So,
but you don't have to. So why?
It's true. It's true. Well, it's definitely fun to look forward to something all day. Before I let John and Marcia take it away, I'll just say that we do have Marcia's book, Final Judgment, available, and they'll talk about that a little later. And I just want to give you a cheers. Let me grab the Brinkman, just a moment. So, does everyone have their cocktail?
Yeah, man.
Right.
Yeehaw! Well, I put my line in it, so you know.
Oh,
it's efficient. Cheers, everybody.
Well, cheers. Thank you all so much for being here. And I'm sure John will give us that recipe a little later on for the drink. And enjoy.
Match, because that is if you lights a match in my vicinity, it's going to be kaboom.
Well, that'd be a whole different video. All right. Thank you. And take it away, John and Marcia.
All right.
Thanks, Cindy.
Hello, Marcia.
Hello, John.
Hello. We're here again for
Marcia
Monday. How fun is that? So anyway, welcome everybody to our virtual book discussion / happy hour. We will be talking about Final Judgment a little bit later, but I did want to remind everybody that if you're tuning in, at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a little green box that says Buy Final Judgment with a signed book plate. So if you want to support the Book Club on the Go, get yourself a book, and there are really, really cool book plates that Marcia signed. Like, why wouldn't you want one of those? Or several of those, like me. You can have sheets and sheets of them. It's a really good way to support the bookstore, and of course to support Marcia in this great new book. Thank you for being here, Marcia. I appreciate you always indulging me in these things.
We've been indulging each other for how many years?
I know,
a long time.
Drinks and a conversation. You know, present it with drinks first, and then you move to a conversation, and it's all good. So anyway, I think that, you know, people who are tuning in probably know a lot about you, so I'm not going to have an elaborate introduction. I think maybe we'll talk about a few things as we go along, but I did want to note that there is a sidebar so people can leave their comments or questions there, and at the end of the conversation, we will definitely try to get to those. And I also want to say that there was somebody, Marie from France. I'm not sure if she's here live with us, but she was going to try, and it's 3 a.m. in France.
Oh my God.
Cheers to you.
Yep.
All right. So anyway, I'm going to start this off with a loaded question. If you can, you know, forgive the wordplay. But I have to ask you, you know, given the state of the world and given the state of California, how are you and what are you drinking?
Well, I mean, I'm grateful that finally, starting yesterday, I could actually see sun, as opposed to like this hazy orb and a little bit of blue sky even. And the smokiness is kind of not happening as badly. So I feel very grateful for that. On a happier note, I am drinking vodka and a little bit of lime juice, my favorite, in my favorite glass, which you may recognize, John, the skull glass.
Oh, hey.
Can you thank me?
There it is.
Can you see the skull? I guess not. It's subtle. But it's there. Along with my name. I didn't even realize that. You know, it took me a while as I was watching it. Oh my God. By that time I'd had 3 drinks. Anyway, well, we don't have to go there.
Well, you know, you drink enough, you forget who you are. I figured it's just
another upside.
All right. So anyway, like I said, people probably have an understanding of you by now, but there are a lot of people who know you just from what they've seen on TV, whether it was, you know, 25 years ago during the trial or all the things that you've done on TV since then. So I am going to ask you to tell us something about yourself that we may not know, and you get bonus points if it's something that I don't know.
That's going to be tough. Something you don't know? There's no way. There's no way. So a serious thing that most people don't know is I started out as a defense attorney, and I did that for a few years, and then I became a prosecutor. And then after I left the DA's office for about 10 years, I did appellate work, which is also criminal defense, court-appointed appeals for the indigent. So that's a serious thing. Other things that people may not know. I love skull art and Day of the Dead art. Might be able to see behind above my head. Those are Day of the Dead dolls, figurines from Mexico. I love that stuff.
Awesome. All right. So far before you considered a career in law, you sort of stumbled into law. That wasn't your initial plan. And people a lot of times, I think, have the feeling that, okay, you had a career as a lawyer and that naturally lends itself to writing legal thrillers. But far before you became a defense attorney or a prosecutor, you had a love of, crime and stories and mysteries and whodunit. So can you tell us, where that came from and how it sort of has impacted your career trajectory? Because it started a long time ago.
It started when I was a kid, like 5 years old. And I was fascinated. I was making up murder mysteries even then, walking around the street and seeing some spots on the sidewalk. And then I decided they were blood spots, no. Then, of course, there's the usual abandoned house somewhere, a few blocks away. And I decided that, of course, murder most foul had happened there. I was a really weird kid. In addition to making treasure maps that I got everybody to believe, including myself, were real. And we're like all over the neighborhood looking for stuff and trying to dig and find. And it's like only after the fact, way after I got home that night, I realized, I made that map up. It's bullshit. I convinced myself. So anyway, yeah, I love to make up stories. That was my first love. And I just never thought of writing as a practical way of making a living. And so that stopped mattering to me at some point. And it was really after I collaborated on the book about the trial that I remembered how much I loved writing. And I said, I want to write crime fiction. I tried to get my collaborator, Teresa Carpenter, who's a fabulous, amazing writer, to do it with me. And she said, no, you go do it. You could write, go do it yourself. So I did. And it started with Rachel Knight. That was the featured a prosecutor, write what you know, that kind of thing. And then segued into Samantha Brinkman, which was really, she was a weird kind of segue for me because I didn't mean to do another series. I meant to do a standalone. And she just kind of appeared to me fully fleshed out. And I just saying, what about me? And so it was another series. And that was the way it went.
I was going to say, you don't say no to Samantha Brinkman.
No, you don't. No, it's not healthy.
But you have given me a beautiful segue because I did want to ask you, about the process of writing Without a Doubt, which was the trial book, because, a lot of books came out from that case. And a lot of books sounded exactly like the one before it and the one that came after it. And yours had a very distinct voice, and it wasn't just an as told to, you actually did some writing. So can you talk about that collaborative process and then maybe just elaborate a little bit on how that inspired you as a writer? Because after that, you went into television work before you started writing novels.
Yeah, and script work. So Teresa arced out the topic for each chapter in a way that made sense both dramatically and realistically, what happened. And she would assign me then the topic. Okay, chapter 1, we're going to talk about, the day you got the case. Chapter 2, we're going to talk about the Broncos, whatever. And then I would write the chapter. And then she would take over and, she said, put as much detail as you can remember into it, as much dialogue as is real. And I did. And then I would send it to her and then she would run over it and made it so much better. I mean, talk about turning straw into gold, it's like that. But it was a really learning process for me too, to see how a great writer works. It was amazing. So that got me, back into the idea of writing. And then I got hired to be a consultant on a show for Lifetime called For the People, which was based on the DA's office in Los Angeles, and wound up writing scripts for the show. And then wound up writing for television for the next few years off and on until I decided, I want to realize the dream I had as a kid of writing crime fiction. I'm going to do it now or never. Right. So that's what made me take the leap.
I was going to say they probably knew that you understood a little something about the DA's office.
A little.
A little bit. But let me ask you too. So Rachel Knight, finally came along, and the experience that she has in the DA's office is a little bit different than what people are going to read about in Without a Doubt, because obviously that was not a good time for you or a lot of people. So can you talk about how you were able to use Rachel Knight and sort of relive the better days of your career as a prosecutor in that fictional world that you built?
Yeah, part of the reason I wanted to write Rachel Knight was because I wanted to relive the years before Simpson. That the reason I joined the DA's office, was to do justice, was to help the victims, was, and I formed a lot of great friendships there. It was a really wonderful life. I loved it so much before all the cameras showed up. So in writing Rachel Knight, I got to relive that. So I wrote Rachel with her best friend, who's also in special trials unit as I was, Tony LaCollette. And then the third in their triumvirate was a female detective in robbery homicide, Bailey Keller. And so the three of them were, the dynamic trio. And I got to, through them, relive the wonderful parts about being a DA.
Sure. Okay. So Rachel Knight, I'm gonna have a little fun with you now. I'm gonna play a little game. Because there are some superficial similarities between Rachel Knight and yourself. Obviously, she is female prosecutor. She works the special trials unit. And a lot of people assume, because of those similarities, that she is very much you are very much her. But you've said, that's not what I intended to do. She's not really my doppelganger. However, there is some power to the subconscious, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've devised a little list. And you're just going to say, yay or nay, because I've found some, character traits, maybe some personality quirks that I think might apply to Rachel, but come from you. And I have fact checkers over here, in the little sidebar. There's people who are like Googling as we go along, and they're going to flag us if it's not true.
This is not good for me. I need another drink.
I know, I was going to say, like, every time I'm right, you have to drink, but your glass would be empty in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to start with this one because it's kind of obvious. But so Rachel Knight, her name is Rachel, and word on the street is that your middle name is Rachel.
Damn. Yeah, it is.
It is.
No, there's a reason for that though. When I first was like my first efforts at writing a crime fiction novel, I was writing in the third person. And it wasn't coming across quite as well as I wanted it to. And it was suggested to me that I try writing first person. To give a better feeling of intimacy and connection to the lead. And so I thought, well, the best way to do that is to give the lead my name, and it helps. It did help. So yes, that is my middle name.
And it's their fault, really, for sort of forcing your hand at doing that. So we'll blame them.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I will.
Yeah, that's right. So Rachel sort of has a tendency to be chronically late. And if I remember correctly, and without a doubt, there's this term, Marcia Standard Time, that your friends have labeled you with.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, in my defense, I was working full time. I had 2 little kids. And in all honesty, I had a problem with time way before I had kids. So, but I'm good. Oddly, now that, my kids are grown, I am much better about time. I show up on time, even a little early. You had no problem with me today. Evidence, there's evidence. Growth, we call it growth. I feel better. I'm doing better.
You are.
It took a million years, but I got there. It was just a lack of, I think really conceptually speaking, had a hard time grasping the passage of time. Like this will take this long and that will take that long. And it just didn't occur to me that, anyway, things are better now.
We'll all drink to that. So Rachel Knight takes exception to authority figures, like the man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about all these things. I got to tell you, the reason I started out as a defense attorney was because I couldn't imagine I would ever want to work for the man. And it shocked me to no end when I decided that that's really what I was going to do. Even so, I had issues with, following the rules all the time, in the sense that I wasn't a hardline prosecutor. And so, especially when it came to certain kinds of low-level cases that had more to do with economic disadvantage than any real criminal intent, I was always asking to make a better deal than the office wanted me to. So, and I got actually invited to join the public defender's office a few times. So in that sense, I think it's kind of more a feeling of knowing what's right and wanting to do what's right, not necessarily what I was told.
Sure.
Not always the best thing, but it was with good intention.
Right. It's all about the intent. You would know as a
Exactly.
prosecutor, intent is very important. I should tell you, if you have to assert the Fifth Amendment at any time, you can.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that. It's going to happen.
So, Rachel, she likes to keep booze in her drawer. Ever a bottle in your drawer? Don't recall.
Yeah, counsel, I really can't recall.
All right, we'll move from that to pretzels. There's a thing about pretzels.
Yeah, man. It goes with the boot. Yeah, it's a good snack.
That's right. All right, so how about, turkey sandwiches and salads for lunch so you can enjoy bar food later in the day, because that's Rachel's thing.
No, that definitely is not mine.
Okay.
I'm not much of a sandwich eater. Thank God we finally found something.
Nice.
It's like ridiculous. Yeah. No, that's not my thing. Salad usually, for lunch, that's more like it. If I ever even had lunch, depends on the day.
Yeah. I was gonna say I just drown mine in dressing, so it's not recognizable as salad. I figure you still get the benefit of the lettuce. So,
you do.
Wears believe me suits to impress her jury.
Well, we all do that. That's just like a given by all lawyers. Yeah, you have to have your believe me suit because when you pick a jury, when you do closing argument, I don't know. It's like a rabbit's foot thing, because does a jury believe you more? No, they don't care.
No, they don't. So Rachel salvaged her oversized desk chair from the hallway because somebody was getting rid of it, and that sort of rang a bell.
Yeah, kind of. Somebody abandoned it. I was rescuing it is what I was doing, really.
You were.
And it was a big chair. It was like a judge's chair. They have big ones, and it was out there in the hallway all by itself, abandoned, feeling lonely. I felt sorry for it. Then I discovered, like a couple months in, that it was like falling apart. It was literally leaking dust, not dust, wood shavings. Probably had termites. Anyway.
Moving on. So often fell asleep with a murder mystery in her hand.
Not anymore. Back in the day, yes. It was really weird. Wall-to-wall crime, whether it was fiction or nonfiction. Like I'd work on cases all day, cases, and then I'd go home and watch Law and Order, and then I'd read crime fiction. I'd buy James Elroy or whatever. It's like it was really boringly consistent. It was just all crime all the time.
Sure. So, in aversion to doing dirty dishes, you never lived in a hotel that I know of, but Rachel lived in a hotel so that she wouldn't have to do the dishes either. And
that was a little wish fulfillment, right?
There's gotta be some.
Yeah. She doesn't have to clean. She doesn't have to cook. She doesn't have to do. It's like it's perfect, right?
It is ideal. I'm kind of jealous of that. And then, of course, there's the love of jazz and retro rock music and all this stuff. Yeah. So, I should ask you then, how is Rachel Knight not you?
I know. Honest to God, as you're listing all these things out, I'm going, yeah, I do. And I think I always have my characters, at least one character that's into jazz, because it feels good to write about the music that I love, and it's straight up jazz, Miles Davis, that kind of thing. But how is she not me? Well, she has a very different childhood. Her emotional landscape is different, for sure. The inner workings. I gave her the trappings, but the rest of it, like I never lived in a hotel. That's the only thing.
There is still time. All right. Well, I guess we should move forward a little bit because I do want to talk about Samantha Brinkman and Final Judgment. But I did want to ask you, because you mentioned that you worked as a criminal defense attorney for a couple of years before moving to the prosecutor's office. And it was really when you started dealing with violent crime and violent criminals that you realized that wasn't for you. So can you talk about why it was appealing to revisit criminal defense through the lens of fiction with Samantha Brinkman versus in real life? Because appellate, defense is much different than what that was.
Yeah, the appellate work is really all on paper. It's all in the briefings. There's occasional oral argument, but it's really not trial work. And with Samantha, I just really wanted to write a different kind of character. She really kind of fits the vigilante justice category. And I wanted someone who could swing for the fences, because Rachel, even though she could be a little bit anti-authority, basically follows the rules. I mean, she's a prosecutor. You don't want her playing fast and loose with the evidence, or fast and loose with the defendant's rights. Samantha isn't so constrained. Her only duty is to protect her client. And Samantha doesn't necessarily always protect her client. It just depends on what they deserve. And she kind of decides. She is judge and jury in all respects. And so it's really fun to write someone who has no compunction about using her investigator to hack into people's emails, to hack into their phones, to break into people's houses, to basically lie to witnesses, to do whatever it takes to find the truth, basically. And so she's a much more wild character than Rachel was.
Sure. And I am going to, again, hold up your book real quick and remind people that Final Judgment is the fourth and final, and it's available right now. And Cindy is selling them with really cool signed book plates. Check that little box at the bottom of your screen. So anyway, I was going to do the elevator pitch for Final Judgment, and then I decided I'm going to let you do that, and I'm going to take a sip of the drink. So do you want to just do a real quick elevator pitch of Final Judgment, and then we'll get into it just a little teeny tiny bit?
Samantha is on a wonderful vacation, I think on Bora Bora, with her boyfriend, Nico, who is an extremely extremely successful martial artist who parlayed his gifts into an empire, basically, of classes and videos and all kinds of things. And, clothing line, he did very well. And they were having a fantastic vacation, which Samantha never takes. And in the middle of that vacation, Nico gets a phone call saying that his mother is in dire condition because the stockbrokers that he recommended, it's an investment company called Gold Strike, all of her savings were wiped out with a trade they made that went belly up. And from there, we find one person dead, then another missing, and Nico becomes the person of interest that Samantha has to protect. And in the course of defending him, learns a lot about his past that he never told her. So it's a lot about secrets. It's a lot about trust. There is a personal story wrapped in with, of course, the investigation and the crimes.
Sure. So as I'm listening to you, I'm also looking at the comments, and there's Cindy saying, don't worry, there won't be spoilers. So I'm going to throw a spoiler at you just for fun. Not a big one. But anyway, so there is a very tasteful off-the-page death in this book, and I felt it very deeply. And I'm just wondering if you'd like to take a second to talk about Beulah and maybe raise a glass to her, because Beulah has had her last ride, and I kind of miss her.
Beulah. The ancient Mercedes that Sam has been driving for way too long, that creaks and stops and screws her up over and over again throughout the series. And just when she has to get to court, it stalls. And then even the mechanic, who is the same one she goes back to over and over, begs her to get rid of this damn car. So we finally retire. Beulah, here's to you. You didn't serve us well.
That shouldn't ruin the book for anybody. That's not.
I don't think so.
So, as I was reading Final Judgment, and you sort of made mention that it opens with Samantha taking a beach vacation, which she never does. And I have to assume that sort of gets back to the wish fulfillment thing, because quite honestly, can you even remember the last time that you took a vacation? Like, I feel like you have to write a vacation.
I do. I did. And that's why I did. You know what I mean? And of course, it had to get cut short because,
Yeah.
You can't just write about drinks on the beach. But the last vacation, I think, was 10 years ago. And I took a friend of mine up to Napa for her birthday. A bunch of us went up. That was really fun. Yeah. Good times. Anyway.
Wow, decade. See, Chelsea, we're not doing so bad.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
guys are doing better.
Yeah. So let me ask you too a little bit more about Final Judgment. So Samantha does end up having to defend her boyfriend Nico, and so of course this adds all kinds of layers and complications to the relationship. So can you talk a little bit about how that affects their personal relationship, given what Nico's accused of and the suspicions that she sort of develops over time?
She, she's mistrustful by nature, suspicious by nature, and then also by upbringing, because she had an extremely traumatic childhood and a mother who is much more sociopathic than anything, or narcissistic, really. And so it doesn't take the reason she has not really had a very serious relationship until now with Nico is because of that mistrust, because of her suspicious nature. And so it doesn't take much to flip that switch and make her start taking another look at Nico. And as she starts to investigate the case and discovers he's lied to her here and he's lied to her there, and what else has he lied about, the suspicion grows and it becomes a real tension point, and they actually have a big fight at some point when he discovers that she went behind his back to look into his life and realizes she doesn't trust him. And it becomes a big issue between them about trust. And in the process, her very best friend, Michelle, calls her out on her hypocrisy, her double standard. And I don't want to give out any more, but Sam has a few secrets of her own, let's put it that way.
Oh, she does. All right. So let me ask you about the idea of closure, because, not everything is wrapped up nicely, but there is some kind of closure for Samantha with an overall story arc. So can you talk about how Final Judgment, it does stand alone because it's got a very specific plot, but there are character relationships that sort of come full circle. So can you talk about how this will satisfy people who have not picked up your books before, but also people who have been following Samantha's personal story?
Yeah, so in every book I catch the reader up. I always give you the backstory, and it, of course, not in the depths that were in the previous books, but I always catch you up. So the reader's going to know that this is the payoff at the end is a big payoff, and why it was something that she wanted to make happen for quite some time, and finally found the opportunity to do it, and it was so. Not to worry, everybody is explained, all the relationships are explained. So if you haven't read the previous books, you won't be in the dark about what's going on here.
Sure. And I should say really quickly, because before you mentioned that Samantha found her new favorite drink on the beach. So her new favorite drink is lime and tequila, shaken with ice and poured straight like a martini. But you have also said that you can enjoy it with vodka if you don't like tequila. Yes. I think that's what Cindy's drinking tonight. That's what I'm drinking tonight. That's what you're drinking tonight.
That's what I'm drinking tonight. Yeah.
That's what we're doing here. And I should also say that Final Judgment, very well reviewed, got a starred review from Publishers Weekly, and they said the plot twists are both plausible and shocking in this intelligent page turner. Not only plausible, shocking, but intelligent too. And fans of whodunits featuring ethical dilemmas will be pleased. So that's wonderful praise. Anyway, moving away from the specifics of the book, because I really don't want to spoil anything. There's a lot of intricacy to it, but I do want to ask you, beyond your knowledge of the law and, having worked as an attorney on sort of both sides of counsel table, what have you found of being an attorney lends itself to writing novels or writing scripts?
Oh, definitely the people I've met. So between the witnesses and all the parties involved in the lawsuit, every lawsuit, there's a bunch. And some of them are very colorful. And being a defense attorney, of course, same thing. You come into contact with a lot of diverse people, and when I say diverse, I don't just mean ethnically or racially, I mean from every aspect of the world, different viewpoints, different attitudes, different ways of life. It's all fascinating. And to be able to draw on that, it's very helpful because, you have to create characters in a book. And so I have the luck of having had a life with experience with so many different kinds of people. I can draw on that, in writing the book.
Sure. And do you find conceptually too, since, when you're presenting a case to a jury, it's really about trying to tell the most compelling, believable story, even if it's not the actual story?
Yeah, I do. I'm a big believer in realism. I know that there are certainly there are some authors that like to pull things out and make it outrageous and make it wild. And, you know, kudos to them, respect. It's just not my style. I prefer to have something that, yeah, I pull it out. I mean, we all do. If we just wrote exactly the way things happen, you'd be snoring. An exception to that, actually, an exception to that rule is a book I just read by Ryan Gaddis, Gattis. I highly recommend it. It's called The System. It's as real as it can possibly be. It's written from multiple points of view. It's about a couple of, one's a gangbanger, one is not. The girl that's involved, it's all the parties. It's very realistic. It's so compelling, and I couldn't put it down. Just fabulous book. So sometimes realism can work, but usually for the purpose of fun, because that's what I like to have along with my drink. I'll pull it out, and I'll, you know, hijinks ensue. I mean, the characters are able to do things and swing for the fences in ways real lawyers could not do or should not do. So there's, in my case, I think it's kind of a wish fulfillment thing. If you had the power and you could get away with blah, 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 fill in the blank, what would you do? So I do pull it out, but I want to always try and make it a little bit grounded. You give you a sense of, but there is something here about the way things really go, about the way a case gets investigated, about what happens in court, that is real. So that even though I do swing for the fences at times, there's a lot of reality there too.
Sure. And let me ask you about that too. People, I think, sometimes are surprised when they hear that Marcia Clark writes legal thrillers, that the vast majority of the action actually takes place outside of the courtroom. So can you talk a little bit about the procedural aspects and why it was that you chose to focus more on the investigation versus the courtroom dramatics?
Because I think we've all seen so much of the courtroom in the last decades, you know, and from every point of view. And in truth, and this is where reality does, you know, my penchant for reality does kind of get in the way. In truth, there isn't that much that can happen in court. How many times can someone get stabbed, you know, in court, or get shot in court? And nowadays, it's even more so with metal screeners and all the rest of the security and everything that we've got. You know, other than oral argument and fireworks between the lawyers and the judge and whatever, that's realistically about as far as you can go in today's world. And so I really felt like I've seen enough of the courtroom dramas. I think most people have. And most of the fun happens outside when you're investigating and discovering new things about the case and talking to witnesses, falling on a new witness or a witness who says something you didn't expect, witnesses who do bad things, witnesses who do weird things. That's really where the fun is. And so I let my character, so Samantha goes to court when there are some fireworks, something that's going to happen, but it's not a lot. It isn't a lot. Most of it is outside where she's running around, usually with her investigator, Alex, who is a masterful hacker.
He is. I would like to know somebody like him.
Would we all?
Do that publicly, but I feel it would be very helpful. So anyway, you know, let me ask you too, because I think we both have in common that we've always sort of been fascinated by crime, you know, real crime, fictional crime. How do you balance, you know, the realities of crime and of victimization with entertainment value, given what you've seen? And also, can you tell us what the role of humor is in that? Because people who know you, people who've read your books, will see that you have a really, really great sense of humor. And I would assume that that's really important in sort of balancing out the grimmer aspects of those.
Yeah, it really, yeah. I think that these kind of books can get very grim and get very dark. And I'm not intending to write a book like that. I want people to have fun. I want people, especially in the day of times like these, I want people to be able to escape, have a good time. But, you know, there's no fun. It's not nearly as fun if there aren't stakes involved, if there isn't tension, dramatic tension. So the balancing of the dramatic tension, the drama, the trauma, you know, I mean, these crime fiction books are about murder. So, and rape and all these horrible things. It has to be leavened somehow. And so I always try to leaven it with humor, and with personal notes between, let's say, Samantha and her father, who's a robbery homicide detective, oddly enough, which puts them not as much at odds as you think. And so you have personal engagement there, and you have, of course, with Michelle and, of course, with Alex, and all of their lives come into play, as well as, of course, notes of humor seeded throughout to keep things from getting too grim.
Sure. And I have to say, people who think they have issues with their parents should check out Samantha's parents, because between Dale and, even worse, Celeste, like, whoa. I mean, whatever you're feeling about your family, if you read these books, you're probably going to feel at least slightly better about it. But anyway, moving right along, I do want to ask you too, you usually have a trio of sort of main characters, with either Rachel or Samantha being the main character and then a couple of surrounding friends. And you mentioned sort of a diversity of cast before, but can you expand a little bit on that? Because we've seen a lot of the secondary characters, some of whom recur throughout the books, like Luis in the Rachel Knight books, or I think is it Deshawn in the Samantha Brinkman books. And so you really get sort of this vast perspective about the people who populate Los Angeles, who are much different than your main characters. And so I think you get a much broader picture of crime and the causes of crime and the fallout. So can you talk about that, and how much of that is intentional versus how much just comes in organically, based on the people you've met, the cases you've tried, and your understanding of the world as it is now?
Yeah, it's to me, it is all of the above. It's organic because that is the way I worked, as an attorney, and especially because I was downtown. It was people from everywhere. It was people, it was Hispanic, it was Latino, it was Black, it was everything. There was and so, I mean, that's real, that's organic. It's a mix. It's definitely a diverse mix. It's also more interesting. I mean, when I watch TV, when I see a movie, when I write a book, when I read a book, I want to see different characters. I don't want to see all the same. I mean, and that doesn't necessarily mean ethnically diverse. It can be, people are different by nature, of course. Each one is an experiment of one. But I think it is more representative of Los Angeles, which is a pretty diverse city so it does deliver on the reality, but it's also more interesting.
Sure. And I'm going to ask you this too, because people feel like, after Snap Judgment came out in 2017, oh my gosh, where did Marcia Clark go? Because we got accustomed to a book a year, occasionally 2 books a year if it was a really good year, like 2016, banging. But anyway, people don't realize that you were very busy with, outside projects in that time. And so between Snap Judgment and Final Judgment, you actually had 3 different shows on the air. You hosted Marcia Clark Investigates the First 48. You did the color commentary on CBS's Pink Collar Crimes. And, just to really overachieve, you also co-wrote and executive produced and were sort of an informal showrunner on the 10-part miniseries for ABC called The Fix. So can you talk about that and the time-consuming nature of those projects, particularly something like The Fix, where you're not only on set as they're recording, but you're writing in a writer's room? Like, it's not all glamour in Hollywood. It's a lot of hard work and long hours, I would think.
From a writer's standpoint, it is not a glamorous job. And I tried to go to set as little as possible, because by the time the actors are doing it, there isn't that much, need for my input. Occasionally it was necessary, but the director's there for a reason. But yeah, it's an enormous undertaking to get a show up on the air. And it's nonstop, like many, many nights till 10, 11 o'clock at night, working, going over the scripts, conceiving the next episodes, it's just nonstop that way. And then there's so much to do, a million meetings where you set the tone of the episode, and then you talk about the production aspects of the show, and I mean, down to the props that you're going to need, every single thing. So there's endless meetings where, as you kind of do layer upon layer upon layer, that goes into each episode. Nobody realizes how much work is involved. Long hours. So during that break, so to speak, after Snap Judgment, I was running my ass off, so to speak. And not to mention, the First 48, Marcia Clark Investigates for A&E, was a show that had me traveling all over the country as well to do all these notorious cases. We do a reinvestigation of all these notorious cases, like Stacey Peterson, Drew Peterson, Jam Master Jay, the Billionaire Boys Club, Robert Blake, all of these famous cases, but they took me all over the place. And those were a lot of work. It was very satisfying job to do. I mean, I loved it, but I was doing that at the same time that we were shooting the pilot for the fix. And then, I mean, it was just, it was crazy times, very, very busy. But I love writing scripts. I think script writing is a whole different discipline. That said, though, because that was the way I started writing fiction, I took a lot of the ways in which that gets set up in television into the system I have for writing books. So I start by writing a general outline, kind of a summary of the story I want to do, and then I do kind of what we would call the outline in a or the beat sheet and then the outline, which I combine into one thing where I call chapter by chapter, like one line per chapter. Now this happens, now this happens, now this happens. And then I sit down to write and I do a chapter a day. Now, in the last book I wrote, I just finished, I'm doing the finishing touches on a standalone, which may turn out to be a series.
Yeah, I was going
to I get dragged into a series every time. But in that sense, I wrote differently in this book, where it's not just one scene per chapter, it can be multiple scenes per chapter, and it's a very different kind of book. So it was a whole new experience. That said, the system of writing for Hollywood, writing for scripts, writing for television, did help me to set up my system for writing books. But it's a very different thing. In Hollywood, when you're writing for television, it's collaborative. You sit in a writer's room with 10 or 11 other writers, and everybody's pitching ideas. It's wonderful. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing to all these smart people coming up with great ideas. And so you're never just sitting alone and banging your head on the wall. What do I do now? Somebody always knows.
Sure. So I have to ask you too, do you find that regardless of the fact that you've been working, either in front of the camera or behind the camera for probably more than 20 years now, because so many people associate you with the trial, do you find that they also associate your creative work with that because they might not necessarily know, that you've published 8 crime novels, that you've done all of these TV shows, and so sometimes the assumptions about you and where your creative ideas come from might be just a little bit wrong?
Yeah, I mean, people, there's a tendency, which is understandable, oh, did you get that from the trial? Is this from the trial? Is that from the trial? And these books, what I write, whether it's for television or for, publisher, is, it's all my life experience. I mean, I think all authors draw on their life experiences, even if there's a lot of research involved. You're still going to be drawing on something from your life to understand the research that you've done. So, yeah, I'm hoping that at some point it'll get known that, it's not just the trial. There's other things that, that I think about.
Well, I know it's so funny because some of us who know, it's like you have this whole world outside of that and so many great accomplishments. And yet some people, still don't know. And then all these TV series happen and it's like you're right back in it all these years later. But anyway, moving on from that. So I do want to ask you, this is my new favorite question to ask people, and I don't know why. So you're going to be, I think, my second guinea pig. I know, right? But this is my thing. So I want to know, what is the best advice that you ever got? And this can be in terms of writing, creativity, or life more broadly. And then what is the best advice that you never got and you wish somebody had told you, but you had to figure out for yourself?
The best advice I ever got was actually given to a room full of people at a panel that I was moderating. I think I was. Anyway, doesn't matter. And that was be relentless. And it was a life rule. Like, you have to be relentless. You have to be tenacious if you're going to achieve anything in this world. And that means that, stick to it. If this is something you love, if you found what you love to do, if you found what's important to you, then you have to stick to it and give it all you've got. At the end of the day, that doesn't necessarily mean you succeed, but you do have to assure yourself that you have left it all on the field, so to speak, because the only real regret that is painful, we'll all have regrets, but the most painful is the one you have when you know that you could have done more or you could have done better. So regardless, win or lose, then, if you always give it your all, you'll always win. That doesn't mean you get what you want, but you will have won because you've done it all. The best advice I'd never got and wish I'd had, what was up with that hair? I mean, the perm. Did I have to? I thought I did. 2 little kids. I wanted wash and wear hair. Every time I see one of those photographs, I go, oh God.
Hey, you went there. I didn't have to. I was going to literally.
No, I mean, but it's true.
Well, let me just say this. You had hair. I'm rapidly losing mine, so I say nothing about your that. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, and we're going to take a little drinking break, and I'm going to try to scroll for some questions from the people who are watching as well. But let me ask you this, too. You mentioned that you're working on a standalone that might now become a series. So can you just tell us a little bit about that book? Not too much. I know Dan might. He's going to jump.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can. I mean, it does. This book does center on prosecutors. I can say that. Yeah. And it's not. And it's told from 2 points of view, two prosecutors.
Okay. Okay.
And it involves murder.
I'm very happy because everybody wants to know if and when you're going to go back to Rachel Knight. You don't have to answer that right now, but I know you always say never, so there is that possibility. But I'm just going to give you a little idea because I know that before I've told you that I have story ideas to bring your characters together, and I've never told you what they are. So I figure, why not now? We have this great opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the big questions that people always want to know is what happened to Romy, who is Rachel Knight's sister, who was abducted, and we never quite figure out what happened to her. So I have this thought where what if, Samantha and Rachel are pitted against each other in court, and Rachel and Bailey do a little investigation, and they find out some of the things that Sam has done on the side and some of the things that her dad has done on the side. And so, they could potentially blow the whistle on that. But what if Samantha and her team of investigators comes back with either we know what happened to Rachel or we know, or not Rachel, Romy, or we know who took her. And they leverage that information to kind of, just a thought that I'm giving you freely.
I love it. I love it.
That's right.
Rope everybody in together. It's great. And what did become of Romy? Do you have an idea of that?
I don't know. Maybe I'll get back to you on that.
Is she a drug dealer? Is she a stripper? Is she
any of the both?
Ooh, interesting. Ooh, she's a polymath.
I know. I like that. All right. Let me see. So you can take a drink if you want to, because I want to see if we have any questions here. Forgive me as I scroll. Please write more books. I think you're going to do that, obviously. Oh, okay. Here's a good one. So this is going back into your history, actually, because we have somebody, my friend Alyssa. Hello, Alyssa. She says, you've been such an inspiration for me in many ways. She is a dancer and a choreographer. So can you tell her about your dance background? And she also wants to know if you still take classes. And if you want to dance for us tonight, you can go ahead. But
are you kidding? After all this? Faceplant time. Yeah. Props to you, dancer and choreographer. My dancing was very, limited in terms of, it wasn't a big professional thing, but I did start in the jazz and then moved into ballet, and I loved it. It was a wonderful kind of, it was a great thing to be able to do to balance out my life, especially when I was a young lawyer, and I loved doing it. But when I got too busy, I couldn't make classes anymore, and so that was that, unfortunately. But major props to you, Alyssa. That's awesome.
All right, let's see. Oh, I should say that we used to do a book club at Book Club on the Go. We had the Marcia Clark Book Club, and we've read and discussed pretty much all of your books with the exception of Final Judgment, because the pandemic kind of, put a little slap on that plan. But we have some of those ladies here tonight. So hi, Penny and Jill and Denise, and they're saying that we love the fix. We talked about it. We all had our theories, and basically we would talk about the books for 5 minutes, and then it would just be gossip and theories about the fix. So someone wants to know if you will ever write an autobiography. So without a doubt, it's sort of a trial memoir with some elements of autobiography, but do you ever think that you might revisit nonfiction in a broader sense?
Probably not. Mainly because I really don't like to talk about myself. I find myself pretty boring. So I, never say never, but I don't, at this moment in time, I'm not really thinking about that.
Sure. Well, boo. Oh, here's a yeah vodka. Okay. Some people, this does not pertain to you, so you're off the hook for 2 seconds.
Okay.
People want to make sure that are not local that they can still order the book and have it shipped to them. And yes, you can. There is a shipping description. So if you want a signed copy of Final Judgment, that can be mailed to you. Excellent. And Cindy named the drink the Brinkman, which I think is fabulous. I know that somebody on another social media platform had asked, do you miss being in the courtroom? Do you ever miss that?
I don't. It's funny. I thought I would because I spent so many years in it. But no, it's funny that when I left, there was a bit of an adjustment because very shortly after I left the office, I started doing correspondent work for Entertainment Tonight, which put me in the courtroom to cover other lawyers doing their cases. And for a minute, it felt really weird. I'm sitting up here with all the reporters, and I should be down there, at counsel table. But that was it. And really, I was okay with being done with court.
That's kind of funny, the things that you think that you're always going to miss because you
Yeah.
expect to do them forever, and then you're not doing it, and all of a sudden there's just like that internal shift and it becomes your new reality, no matter how much you might not have expected it.
That is really true, John. Because when I was in the DA's office, I thought I was going to be there forever. And that was my plan. And then the trial happened and I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I left. And it was a big adjustment because, as you said, you think you're going to do this forever. You think this is where it's at, and then it's not. And that it was a big sea change, but yeah, I needed to.
Sure. All right, let's see. Scrolling right back down. The fix was so freaking great. Yes, it was. And actually, I'm pretty sure you can still watch it, which is awesome.
Probably find it. Yeah.
It's all over the place. Oh, Sam says you should go on Dancing with the Stars, then they might actually watch the show.
No gracias.
Just take a pass. Oh, let's see. Coffee says, I thought you would be drinking tequila since that's Sam's drink of choice. See, there's another distinction between the characters. She prefers tequila, you prefer vodka.
There you go.
We're getting deep now. We are getting deep. Oh, and Cindy's telling me there's a couple questions in the poll area. I don't even know what the poll area is. It sounds a little dirty. Crystal says Samantha and Rachel are strong women that both tackle adversity. It's nice to have those types of characters to connect with and not the typical damsel in distress. Thank you for that, Marcia. Do you want to?
You're most welcome. I totally agree with you.
Right? Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. Like you have, very strong female protagonists, but they actually have, strong friendships with other women, and it's not this stereotype of everybody's in competition and trying to stab each other in the back to get ahead. So can you talk about that? Because that was an intentional choice, right?
Very intentional. I really didn't. I just think that more often than not, women are each other's best friends. They are each other's supporters. They're the ones we turn to, in times of stress, in times of joy. And I wanted to depict that in all its glory because that's much more the case than the backstabbing, bitch fight kind of stuff. So in that sense, yeah, I always do try to write books that have female empowerment basis to them.
Sure. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell us this, but now that we've teased the new book, the standalone that might become a series, any idea when that might be out? Or is it too soon?
Yeah, it's too soon to say. Because publishers, they have their own timetable when they want to release stuff. So there's no telling.
It's a slow process, but the good news is there's 8 books plus the memoir, so you can go back and read those in the meantime. Let's see. So we know about Marcia the lawyer and, of course, Marcia the writer. Can you tell us something about Marcia the mother, the friend, etc., etc., etc.? Is there anything you want to share about yourself personally, or what you hope that you've imparted on your children?
I was blessed to have 2 great sons, and so I don't know. I don't take much credit for the wonderfulness of them. They just somehow they were wonderful, and they are wonderful. But I certainly did give them that message of be relentless. I certainly did try to win. I try to live it and show it as well as tell it, and they are. And so they are a source of great joy. And Yeah.
That's awesome. And you don't have to comment on this, but I think one of the things that always stuck with me from Without a Doubt is there's a point where you talk about that you knew, there would be a time that you would be handing that book to your children, and that, there were opportunities where maybe you could have, considered dropping out of that case when you realized, what an absolute mess it was becoming and what it was destined to be. But you stuck with it because you wanted that to be the example for your children, that just because things are difficult doesn't mean that you walk away from them. So props to you. Heck, I'm going to drink to that because,
Okay. I'll take any excuse. Any excuse will do.
Oh, here's a fun one from Nicole Kent, who we know from your social media. She wants to know, what is your best advice for a prospective law student, which is her, LOL.
Oh, poor thing. Sympathy. Let's see. Best advice. I think just know that you will get through it. Everybody suffers in some respect or another. I don't know anyone who comes out of law school saying, God, that was fun. It's just a necessity. It's just, you got to get through it. Take the exam, take the bar, and then you get to practice. And you'll love practice. Practice when you finally get to be a lawyer. It will have been worth it, I promise you. But don't be depressed if you find yourself not having a great time. You've got plenty of company, especially me. The last thing I wanted to do was go back to school, because when I graduated college, I graduated undergrad. I don't love school. I love to learn, and I like to study on my own. So, give me the stuff. I'll go home and read. Leave me alone. But you don't get to do that. And so when I finished undergrad, I didn't know that I was going to go to law school. I didn't know what I was going to do. The job I had meant to do was to work for the State Department. I wanted to work in the Foreign Office. They did not like the idea of putting a woman in the field. And I later learned that even in today's world, they still don't love it. I didn't know that. So that dream went out the window. And then it took me a while to kind of get my bearings. It took a year. And I finally realized, I guess that's it. And I had to go back to school, and I was very unhappy about it. But, it's a means to an end. So, Nicole, what I can say is you'll get through it. You'll be really glad you did. And you are not alone in the pain and suffering if you're finding it to be a big drag.
So maybe you should consider the vodka and the tequila.
Yes. Mix them even.
See, I think that's great advice. Another strong female protagonist. Love that about the books, which is great. Here's a question from Susan McCann. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you here. Don't worry if you forget anybody, because I know we always put you on the spot with this question, but who are some of your favorite authors? Who do you like to read when you have time to read?
Well, I just met, and really lately, not much. I just mentioned Ryan Gaddis. I just read his book, and it was so phenomenal. I can't really recommend it enough. The System, it's quite wonderful. I've always loved James Elroy. Shoot.
No, that's good.
The names, see, I'm really, but the problem is I'm terrible with names. So yeah, there's a lot of great authors. Karen Slaughter, I love her. Shoot. And I just have trouble. I don't remember names in life in general. Friends. I mean,
your name is engraved on your glass. We know this.
So bad. Thank God. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd forget. Pointed my kids when they were young, and I did. You know who you are. Anyway. So yeah, I've never been good at this question. I really should try and just memorize some names of the authors that I've loved, because I have loved quite a few. But anyway.
Fair enough. Hey, you gave us some good ones. All right, last couple of questions. I did want to ask you too, as a lifelong, a lover of books, a lover of reading, has it been difficult now that, you have so many demands on your time that the more you write, I assume the less you get to read? How do you handle that? I think this is just an excuse, but I tell myself that I don't write a lot of fiction because I'd have to give up reading a lot of fiction, and I just can't do it.
Honest to God, it is something that, I used to read voraciously before I started writing. And not that I stopped reading, but I don't get to read nearly as much because writing takes up, as you know, all your time. And it's a day and night thing. It sucks up a day so fast. The hours fly. And even, the only time the hours don't fly is when you can't think of anything, and that's the worst. But Yeah, I don't find that I get to read nearly as much. I might have some time coming up when I can, and I'm going to. And I'm going to read like crazy, try and make up for lost time.
I was going to say, should we all laugh now? Do any of us believe that? I'll remind you of this. Okay, last couple of questions. Where did you receive your law degree, and what was your undergraduate degree in?
My undergrad degree was at UCLA in political science with a specialization in international relations in the Middle East. And my law degree was at Southwestern University in Los Angeles.
Excellent. And I think this is a nice note to end on from Lisa. She said, I wonder if it's our Lisa, if it's Lisa from the Bitchin' Book and Boozers, who, you've met her, we've read all your books, talked about your books, but it could be a different Lisa. She says, I hope you realize what an inspiration you are. Thank you, Marcia. That's very nice.
Oh my God, thank you so much. I so appreciate that. That's very too kind.
Well, thank you so much, Marcia. This has been delightful, and the hour passed super, super quickly, as it always does. But always a pleasure drinking with you and discussing books. Whatever.
Yeah, always a pleasure, John. You're tremendous and awesome and wonderful, as always. Such a pleasure. And guys, thank you so much for coming. It's so nice to hang with you. And, our distant happy hour. It's better than none. The happiest of hours.
All right. So cheers to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Marcia Monday. I mean, honestly, Mondays suck. What could be better than Marcia Monday? That's what gets me through life sometimes. So I don't think that Cindy is coming back on. She's going to terminate this conversation in a minute. That sounds very official. She's going to terminate it. But she says, thank you, Marcia, John, and attendees. So cheers to everybody. And I guess we should drink to that, and then we'll probably be on. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Cindy, and thank you, everybody.
This is as close to a fruit as I've gotten in a real long time.
See, I'm a health advisor.
You are. You are good for our health. All right. Thanks, Marcia. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.